So we're going to focus on just the first phase in this video, and we'll do a separate video for phase 2. Now, I did talk about this very briefly in the I have it set up where it's like a course that you can watch literally everything that you need to know about shapeshifting. It's like, I think part 1 through 6 or something, and it talks about that. But that can be a bit overwhelming, and so I'm just trying to kind of condense some of this as best I can and focus on one topic at a time. So this today is going to be about the phase 1 of physical shift. Okay, I do have to set something straight before I actually start telling you how to do this, because a lot of the general information on physical shifting, unfortunately, most of the stuff that you look up on the internet is quite botched. Okay, what I'm about to tell you, it's things that is ancient. It's things that the source of the information isn't coming from the internet. It's coming from ancient ancestral pagan magic. Okay, there's very few people, but there are some specific clans and things that will, and tribes that will actually still practice this and still have the knowledge and the wisdom of it. But there's very few of us out there. And it's kind of a hidden knowledge. It's hidden for a reason. I mean, if everyone knew it existed, if there was proof, that it existed, then we would still be in the witch hunt era. And we'd still, I mean, when people know things like this exist, they lose their fucking minds. They go insane. So the very last thing that I could do is kind of like an unsaid rule. The very last thing that I could do is actually physically, demonstrate, but I can tell you this is how it happens, this is how you do it. So I can teach you, I just cannot demonstrate. I was born a shifter, but I didn't know it until one of the people from one of those clans told me about it, and actually throughout life had seen proof. It's going to take something like that probably in this time, in this era, to open your eyes to it. But I encourage you, because this magic, it really does go off of intent and intent alone. You think it, you make it happen. That's kind of the kind of magic this is. Okay. The other misconception that there is out there is this terrible, horrid misconception that these creepy people want to tell you that you have to do something, this massive, sinister ritual, and that's not true at all. The only time you should even have to do a ritual, period, for this is if you weren't born a shifter already. And honestly, I don't see many situations where you'd even be given sacred permission to do that. Typically, you've got to be born already and as a shifter, and it's not so much a ritual as it is just opening a door to the gift that you naturally have. For most of us, it's suppressed. If we do have this gift, it's been suppressed because of what society has told us to do. But if had you do a ritual for some reason, just going on the if with that, ill intent immediately fucks up your chakras. And this is impossible to succeed in if your chakras are not balanced. Why? Because chakras physically affect the body. So for example, if I'm trying to shapeshift physically, and maybe my heart chakra is imbalanced, maybe everything else will go fine until it gets to my heart, and then literally I start having a heart attack. Literally, it's your body saying stop because you're not ready, and if you do this anyway and try to push past it and do it anyway, something's going to rupture, something's going to tear, you might even die. Okay, which leads us to the last misconception, that it always has to be painful. No, actually the pain is a sign that you're not doing something right. The pain is a bad sign. The pain is telling you that you're not ready. Because if you were ready, this should not have any sort of true pain. No, I'm not going to lie. I felt it, and it's not pleasant. Especially when your organs start shifting. It is not pleasant, but it's not painful. Okay? Even if I'll just give you two more examples. If your stomach chakra is imbalanced, you're going to feel like you're going to projectile vomit. But if it's balanced, it might feel uncomfortable, but you're not going to feel like you're going to vomit. You see what I'm saying? People try to put science and logic where magic is. There is no room for magic in science and logic. There is no room for logic in magic. So get that out of your head right now, because what this runs off of is intent and spirit, not science. Okay. Now that we've got all that boring stuff out of the way, let's actually talk about how to do this. So there's something called a physical shift. There's something called a phantom shift that happens right before the physical shift. Wow. I think I need something to wake me up. And that phantom shift is a precursor to phase 1. So basically, everything that you learn in the phantom shift, if you haven't watched what phantom shift is and how to do a phantom shift, I highly recommend watching that, because that's the bread and butter for this. Okay, but I'll just in a gist. A phantom shift basically is, it feels like something's there, but you look and it's just, for example, it feels like claws, but you look and it's just your nails. But it feels real, and that is, even if it's a really powerful one, you could, with your other hand, you could touch the tip of the claw and it feel something. Maybe it doesn't feel solid, but you can feel something. Okay, and that is why it is classified as an in-between non-tangible and tangible. It is in between the two. Non-tangible magic is something you cannot see or feel. Tangible magic is something that you can see and feel. And phantom is right in the between. Okay, so if you can get that phantom shift, we're just going to use claws for an example. So if you get phantom shift with the claws, okay, and now with the intent of that, you're actually going to shift physically. It always has to be in the back of your mind, and like I said, because it is a mind over matter thing, because it runs off of intent, if you sit there and go, okay, I'm going to shift now, but why am I doing this? This is stupid. This is ridiculous. That is going to cancel out the first intent, which was to do it in the beginning. So I'm not asking you to believe, I'm just asking you to not disbelieve. Okay? If you want to be neutral about it and say, okay, I'm going to see what happens, but truthfully be neutral. Okay? 99 times out of 100, you're going to sit there and nothing's going to happen. Expect that. And some people it may be more, some people it may be less, before something actually physically happens. You cannot just say, oh, nothing's happening. Well, I said it wasn't real. See, you can't do that. You have to be truthfully open-minded, because it runs off of, you think it, you make it happen. You're going to cancel out, it's going to stop everything. The very second that you stop believing, it literally just cancels out the other intent of to try to do it. So once you get to the belief issue resolved, okay, then you need to really start to focus on the act itself. Okay, the last thing you want to do is this. This is theatrics. If you do, it's going to stop it in its tracks. I don't know why. I have never figured this out. But for whatever reason, it has to be limp. Okay? You cannot be using any of the muscles. It has to be completely relaxed. If you're ever going to hope to physically shift, it has to be relaxed. In fact, I would recommend lying down, because once you get to phase 2, you're probably going to want to lie down. In fact, some people might fall down in phase 2. if they're not already lying down. So I'd just recommend to lie down in the beginning anyway. Okay, it's easier to focus on one piece of you than to try and do something like an entire body all at once, because that's way too overwhelming. So when you're first starting out, just focus on one piece of you. So we're going to take the claws again as an example. Okay, and once you finally have something starting to happen, this is what it's going to feel like. Instead of just feeling like there's a phantom there, it's actually going to start to feel like it's expanding, tingling, that kind of sensation. Kind of like, not exactly, but kind of like when you're lying down and you got your hand somewhere like kinked up and then it falls asleep on you. Kind of like that, but not exactly. It is kind of a tingling sensation, especially when it gets further along. But you're probably going to feel that sort of expanding thing. It doesn't really feel like it's swelling. It just kind of feels like it's expanding, and for lack of better terminology. And so you're going to latch on to that feeling and try to exacerbate it. Try to make it more prominent, actually, is what I'm trying to say. Try to make it more prominent. And don't lose track of the thought either of what you're trying to shift, especially if you know that your chakras are imbalanced and you know that you're not ready to fully shift. Then you should never try to fully shift. You should, with the intent of, okay, I'm going to keep it at my extremities, or I'm only going to keep it at the claws. You know, don't let it get into your organs, because that's going to cause you unnecessary pain if you're not ready. You can only do a partial shift, not a full shift. Okay. So if your chakras are not balanced enough to do a full shift, with the intent that you're not going to let it bleed into your organs, okay? It's going to stop at the extremities at least, okay? It's very important. So, like I said, that feeling should get a lot more intense, and at the very end of phase 1, you're going to see a slight change, but you're not going to see you know, you may look at your nails and say, well, is it? I can't tell. Or you may look at the pads and say, that looks 3 times thicker. Is my hand swelling? What's wrong with my hand? Why is my hand swelling? It's not swelling. It's you just got thicker pads. Okay, so it's things like that you could barely start to see a difference, or it's quite obvious, but it's still in the shape of a hand. So, you know, your pads are 2 times, 3 times thicker, but it's still in the shape of a hand. You see what I'm saying? So you sit there and question what's really happening at the end of phase 1. But when you get to phase 2, there is no questioning anymore, because it's quite obvious what is happening. Phase 2, things actually start physically being visible. Muscles, bones shift, okay? And when you get into that, which I'll talk about more in the next video, okay? But when you get into phase 2, especially if you're doing a full-on, complete physical shift, there will be a part where it almost feels like that moment where you're in between asleep and awake. If you've ever had that feeling where you can kind of feel yourself kind of grow unconscious, except you stay in between. You never fully get unconscious. You always just most of us don't ever actually go unconscious. We stay in that moment. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you know, it starts feeling really weird in phase 2. If it's not weird enough in phase 1, it's going to feel really weird in phase 2. It may take you many hours on end to go from phase 1 to phase 2, especially one of the first times that you do it, okay? Because it's unlocking that door for the first time. The full process, once you've mastered it, should only take you several minutes, you know, but expect that you may get stuck in phase 1 for a really long time. You may get stuck in phase 1, and you just have to keep trying and keep trying. Don't get discouraged. It's normal, especially in this era where everyone's telling you it's not possible, okay? The more that you have belief in it, usually, and especially the The more balanced your chakras are, quicker you get to phase 2.